The little girl calls 911, begging for them to save her mom. When the police arrive, they are shocked to see in a small, peaceful town nestled beside lush green hills, there is a family that anyone looking at them would think is the epitome of happiness. Elena, that 30-year-old woman, has a gentle appearance, but her eyes radiate the resilience of a mother who never stops fighting for her children. She works tirelessly all day long to nurture her daughter Lucy, who is only 3 years old but can already feel the boundless love from her mother. Lucy, with her innocent eyes and radiant smile, always believes that this world is a place filled with love and protection. On mornings at their home, Elena often woke up before the sun rose, prepared breakfast, tidied up the house, and then hurried out to work. Although tired, she always found joy in every glance from Lucy, in every innocent smile of the little girl. On the outside, their family looked like a perfect, peaceful painting. But behind those walls, the story is not as it seems. Elena, with every step she takes, always has to hide a painful truth that her family is not always filled with joy. James, Elena's husband, is someone everyone admires from afar. During the day, he is a calm man, loving to his wife and children, always making others believe that their family is a symbol of warmth. But when night falls, when the alcohol begins to seep into James's body, another person awakens. He was no longer the husband Elena once loved, but a violent, uncontrollable man with fits of rage that made Elena live in fear every night. In those moments in a house that seemed peaceful, it was the time when Elena had to struggle to keep what was most precious, peace for Lucy, and sometimes her own life. Amid that devastating storm, Elena always had to find a way to stand firm, to keep her family from collapsing, even as everything gradually slipped out of her grasp. She knew that without this strength, not only love, but her entire world would shatter. Every evening, as Lucy's laughter gradually fades and the house becomes quiet, Elena feels a change in the atmosphere. That's when James started drinking, and everything around her seemed to sink into another darkness. The storms within him were uncontrollable, and from that point on, a completely different person emerged, cold and terrifying. The initial scoldings turned into harsh curses. Then, when he couldn't control his anger, James wouldn't hesitate to strike. Elena's feeling at that moment was one of helplessness, not because she couldn't find a way to protect herself, but because in that instant, she clearly felt that the strength to face these outbursts was something she couldn't change. Each punch was a painful reminder that she couldn't control the situation, that she and Lucy could fall into danger at any moment. James's angry shouts echoed in the small house, making the atmosphere suffocating. Elena tried to stay silent, trying not to add more tension, but the fear in her heart grew stronger, like an unstoppable rising wave. However, fear is not the only thing tearing at Elena's mind. Every time James quietly left after his fits of rage, she couldn't help but feel a sense of guilt and turmoil within her. Elena loves her husband. She once loved him deeply, loved the man she believed would be a wonderful father to her daughter. But the shadow of alcohol and rage had destroyed the man she once admired. She couldn't understand why he had changed so much, couldn't explain why love and happiness could turn into violence and fear. And in those very moments, Elena was not only fighting against James, but also battling with herself. She wants to protect Lucy, but how can she protect the girl in this family full of chaos and danger? How could she leave the husband she once promised to be with for life when every time she thought about leaving, Elena imagined the harm that the separation could cause her daughter? She didn't know how to escape this cycle of violence without making things worse, without hurting her own family. These questions keep repeating in her mind, each one heavier than the last, each one reminding her that she is in a situation with no simple answers. Even though she was only 3 years old, Lucy had begun to realize that something was wrong when the family's peaceful evenings were shattered by screams and heavy silence. The little girl didn't understand the reason, but there was a vague feeling, a sense that every child has, a change in the air, the tension and coldness in her mother's eyes. In the days before, Elena's eyes were always filled with warmth, with boundless love for her daughter. But now, that gaze often contains an invisible anxiety, an exhaustion that Lucy cannot explain, but feels very clearly. When the loud noise echoed from the living room, when James walked in with a grimace and the stench of alcohol, Lucy often hid behind the door, her wide eyes looking at her mother, her small hands clutching her own as if seeking protection. The little girl couldn't say anything, but deep in her tender heart there was a growing fear. Lucy is afraid of the loud arguments, afraid of the tension in the air, and above all, she is afraid of witnessing her mother being hurt in her helplessness. Every time Elena tried to calm the situation, trying to keep James within the bounds of control, the little girl couldn't understand why her mother couldn't stop crying, and why the husband her mother always spoke about with love had become someone she had to avoid. But what made Lucy feel worse was her mother's helplessness. Mom was always the person the girl turned to for safety. But now, in those moments, even Mom couldn't protect herself, let alone protect Lucy from the violence happening right in the house the girl called home. That feeling of hopelessness, the fear mixed with pain of being unable to help her mother, seemed to have silently but persistently taken root in the girl's mind. A long, tiring day at work made Elena just want to go home, wash away her worries, and feel the warmth of her family home. But as she stepped through the door, the dim light in the living room made everything feel strange. James, the husband she had always longed to return to, was already drunk, and as soon as he saw her, he couldn't contain his anger. The scolding words began to echo, quickly escalating into shouting. Elena tried to stay calm, preparing dinner while hoping James's anger would pass quickly. But this time, it didn't stop at just shouting. James lunged at her without any hesitation, punching her hard, as if that anger couldn't be released through words but had to be vented through violence. Elena was pushed to the floor, her head spinning, but she still tried to get up, tried to fight back, as an instinctive reaction. However, she quickly realized that each time she stood up, James's cruelty pulled her down another notch. The physical pain was just a part, the emotional damage was even deeper. Each blow tore apart the meager hopes she had left for a complete family. And during those dark moments, Lucy's cries from the next room were a painful reminder of the child she always tried to protect. But this time the difference was that Lucy no longer just sat quietly as she always did. The little girl, only 3 years old, stood silently looking through the crack in the door, her eyes filled with fear, but also full of determination. Lucy felt her mother's pain, and in that moment, she knew that no matter how small she was, she could not sit idly by while her mother endured this cruelty. With trembling hands, the little girl did what no one in the family had thought of. Despite being so terrified that her hands and feet could barely stand, Lucy ran to the phone, mustering all her strength to dial the number she had heard her mother say many times, 911. That was the first time the little girl felt that she could do something, even though she didn't understand everything, but at least she acted when she saw her mother needed help. The sound of the ambulance siren faded away, but in Lucy's heart, her decision brought a completely new feeling, a small spark of hope igniting in the darkness. Even though fear enveloped her, the girl proved that in the most desperate situations, sometimes strength comes from the smallest hearts. When the phone rang with an emergency call, James immediately realized what was happening. The anger he was trying to suppress suddenly erupted like a fire meeting a strong wind. His gaze shifted from anger to madness when he discovered that Lucy had called the police. In his eyes, it was an unforgivable betrayal, and that madness quickly overshadowed any rational thought. He was no longer the husband Elena once knew, but a man consumed by irrational rage. In a fit of rage, he charged in, using his muscular strength to lock Elena and her child in the bedroom, bolting the door as if they were prisoners with no escape. The cold, brutal threats filled the room, making it suffocating and stifling. He said that he would make them never see the sunlight again, never have the chance to step outside to feel the air of freedom. Elena looked around in panic, trying to stay calm, but fear was gradually taking over her. She sensed the danger hanging in the air, a feeling that no words could fully describe. Her heart tightened, not out of fear for herself, but because she couldn't do anything to protect Lucy from this brutality. She turned back to look at her daughter, that innocent face filled with fear, the big round eyes as if wanting to cry, but didn't dare. She couldn't let Lucy witness this scene one more time, couldn't let her little child live in fear. However, as that fear spread within her, a thought flashed in Elena's mind. If she didn't act right now, everything would be beyond saving. But how to keep Lucy safe while she herself is also at risk of losing her life? She looked through the crack in the door, heard James's footsteps in the hallway, knowing that time was running out. The conflict within Elena surged. On one side was the instinct to protect her child, on the other was the fear for her own life. She knew that if she wanted to keep her daughter safe, she had to find a way to escape this situation, even if it meant facing James once again. Mary, the neighbor living next to Elena's house, is an elderly, kind woman who always cares about those around her. Her house is located near the window of Elena's living room, where sounds from inside easily pass through the thin walls. That night, when the shouting and loud noises from Elena's house continued to echo, Mary clearly heard every angry, violent sound. She had gotten used to those sounds before, but tonight something was different. The banging, the hissing through clenched teeth, and the threats became more intense than ever. Mary felt a wave of anxiety rising within her. She looked out the window, her aged eyes reflecting unease, but she could no longer turn a blind eye. Although she knew very well that James was not an easy person to deal with, someone who could become aggressive and uncontrollable when drunk, her heart could not turn a blind eye to the pain that Elena's family was enduring. She thought of the panic in Lucy's eyes, thought of Elena trying to protect her daughter amidst her husband's rage. After a moment of silence, Mary decided she could no longer stand by and watch these terrible things continue. She quickly took out her phone and dialed the emergency number, even though her heart was racing with fear. "Police, I need help. The family next door is in danger." Her voice was choked with worry, but also filled with determination. Mary knew that calling the police could be a turning point in Elena's family's life, and possibly their last chance to stop the storms of violence they had been enduring for so long. When the police finally arrived, the flashing lights of the patrol cars illuminated the quiet street, breaking the tense silence of the night. They quickly approached the house, clearly hearing the noises inside, the threats, and the loud banging that made everyone sense the level of danger existing within. When the door was opened, James was in a frenzy, his eyes bloodshot, his hands still covered in wounds, and his breath heavy with alcohol. He did not realize that the appearance of the police had completely changed the situation. In just a few minutes, everything changed rapidly. The police officers, accustomed to dangerous situations, immediately took control of the situation and arrested James on the spot. Elena, in a state of panic and exhaustion, was brought outside, where Mrs. Mary was standing, watching with a look of deep concern. Elena's hands trembled as she realized that she was finally free from the long-lasting nightmare. But the fear has not completely disappeared yet. Although James has been taken out of the house, this does not mean that everything is over. He was caught, but his presence in their lives is not easily erased. Elena knows that breaking up a family is not a simple matter. What happened today is not just the end of a physical struggle, but the beginning of a new battle. A battle with the feelings of guilt, shame, and the pain of what has happened over the past time. The actions of the police may have helped them escape immediate danger, but the psychological wounds still linger. The unspoken questions about the future, about how to start life anew, still linger in Elena's heart as she looks at her daughter, a child who does not deserve to grow up in such fear. After that event, everything in Elena's life seemed to be turned upside down. She sat in the empty house, the dim light from the bedside lamp casting shadows on her weary face, and thought about what had happened. The physical pain from James's blows had gradually subsided, but the pain in her heart was deeper than ever. Alina realized that she could never go back to her old life, that she could not let her daughter continue living in this environment of violence and threat. The love for Lucy urged her to make the hardest decision of her life, to leave the past behind and start over from scratch. She not only needs to protect herself, but also to protect her daughter's future. Cannot let Lucy grow up in a world full of fear and crime like this. With strong determination, Elena began searching for a new job, knowing that it would be a journey far from easy. She had no other choice but to rebuild her life, despite her weary legs and anxious heart. But every time she looked into Lucy's eyes, she found the strength to keep moving forward. A brighter future is waiting for her and her child ahead, and that is the reason Elena cannot give up. Although her mother decided to leave and family life changed completely, the wounds in Lucy's mind still linger, smoldering and persistent. The little girl still cannot forget the horrifying images deeply etched in her mind, the arguments, the screams, and the times she witnessed her mother in pain. Even though she was only 3 years old, Lucy could clearly feel the difference in her life. The little girl still occasionally wakes up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat and with a racing heart, as if the nightmares still refuse to let her go. However, Elena's love and protection created a sturdy shield sheltering the little girl. Mother is not only a caregiver, but also a great source of encouragement, a pillar for all sorrows. Every time Elena tightly hugs Lucy, her simple words of comfort bring peace to that small heart. Although the wounds in her mind have not yet healed, her mother's love is a magical remedy that helps Lucy gradually overcome the haunting memories of the past. The little girl knows that she no longer has to be afraid, and more importantly, her mother is always by her side, never abandoning her. The Pinewood Hills community stood by Elena and Lucy in their most difficult moments. The neighbors, especially Mary, were not only witnesses to the pain, but also fought together to create change. Mary, with her patience and kindness, has become an important part of the healing process for the two of them. Every time she visited, she brought with her unconditional support and gentle yet heartfelt advice, making Elena feel that she was not abandoned at all. Her presence was like a small light in the darkness, a great source of moral support for both of them. With the support from Mary, domestic violence organizations also quickly stepped in, providing Elena with the necessary resources to help her get through this challenging period. Counseling sessions, legal support, and psychological recovery programs have opened new doors for Elena. Every step, no matter how small, helps her feel like she is getting closer to a new life, a life she can control and rebuild from the ruins. Elena realized that although she had to fight alone for all these years, now she is no longer alone. The community is not just a collection of people living around, but a large family ready to open their arms to welcome and support. The love they showed her and Lucy helped her regain her strength, making her more resilient in the journey of recovery. The initial steps may still be bumpy, but with each passing day, she feels herself moving forward, where the light of hope finally begins to shine. In the end, James had to face the consequences of his violent actions. After a long trial process, he was convicted of domestic violence and sent to prison. This is not only a legal victory, but also a spiritual victory for Elena and Lucy. Although the pain of the past cannot be easily erased, at least they can feel that justice has been served. Elena and Lucy can now start a new life, free from James's ruthless control. Each new day is an opportunity for them to recreate what has been lost, to build a future free from the shadow of fear. Although life still holds many challenges ahead, Elena and Lucy have found a glimmer of light amidst the dark nights. Elena learned that no matter how difficult the circumstances, unconditional love and resilience are the keys to overcoming all hardships. She was no longer the weak woman of the past, but a strong, brave mother, always ready to fight for her daughter. Lucy, though still young, has begun to see changes in her life. The little girl no longer had to live in fear, and gradually, the painful memories faded as she was surrounded by her mother's love and protection. Both mother and daughter began to build a new life, free and full of hope. Elena found a stable job, and Lucy started going to school where she could live in a safe and healthy environment. They no longer have to live in darkness, but under the light of renewal and hope for the future. The story concludes with a powerful message about resilience, courage, and love. Elena and Lucy, despite experiencing deep pain and loss, never gave up hope. They found the strength to stand up to move forward on the path ahead. They have opened a new chapter in their lives, not only a life free from violence, but also a life filled with love and the ability to rise from emotional wounds. This story is a testament to the strength of the human spirit, that even if we fall to the depths, as long as we have the courage to stand up, we will find the light at the end of the road.